This is Lydia Jakovac from the Rossland Museum with the Memories Project, and today is Monday the 28th of April 2014, and I'm here today in Esling Park Lodge with a couple by the name of Gwen and Jim Markle. And Gwen, do I have your permission today to record this interview?
Yes.
And Jim, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you have.
Thank you very much. So, let's start with Gwen. If you could tell me where you were born and when you were born, and a little bit about your parents.
Well, I was born in Drumheller, Alberta, April 5th, 1936. And my father was born in Wales, and he came to Canada to be with his brother, who was in Drumheller at that time, and he worked as an accountant in the mine in Drumheller. And my mother was working in the bank at the time that he came, and I don't know what she was doing, but she was in the bank in Montreal or whatever, and that's where they met and married.
Mm-hmm. And so where did you grow up?
Well, I lived there for a year, and then my mom and dad moved to Vancouver.
Okay. And brothers and sisters?
I had one brother. He was 6 years younger than I.
And his name?
His name was Gary.
Okay. And you just had one brother?
I had one brother.
And Jim, tell us a little bit about where you were born and when, and a little bit about your parents.
I was born on January 24th, 1936 in Drumheller also. And my parents were John and Edna Markle. And my father was a school teacher. And my father joined the Air Force in 1939. And consequently, my mother and I followed him around. And I went to 9 schools before I was in grade 5. And then we moved eventually to Olds, Alberta, and I lived in Olds, Alberta till I graduated from high school, and then moved to Calgary for a short time, and then that time Gwen and I got married, and I accepted a position with the Bank of Montreal in Rossland, and joined the bank on January 15th, 1958, 1959. And then a year later, we got transferred to Vancouver. And I was in Vancouver for roughly 8 years. And then I left the bank to come back and join an investment firm called Middle & Doherty. And I joined there in 1959. I was only there for 1 year's time. And then I moved to, I accepted a position as Deputy Clerk Treasurer of the City of Rossland, where I worked for 14 years. And after that, I guess my next career was back to Midland Walman as an investment advisor. I had a very successful career and retired on September 30th, 1995.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we got a lot of the overview right there. Very good. So Gwen, when did you first come to Rossland?
I was in grade 5.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about your schooling and what you remember.
Well, I went to McLean School. I lived not too far from there, 2 blocks. The school was on 2nd and St. Paul. I was on 4th and St. Paul. And that was grade 5 and 6. And then the old high school, original high school, was down the bottom end of town. And
Cook Avenue School.
On Cook Avenue. It's called Cook Avenue. And I went to high school there, grade 7, 8, and 9. And then the new high school, which is the one up by the ballpark, which is no longer the high school. I started there in grade 10 and graduated in 54.
54. And your brother, he also went...
Yeah, he was 6 years younger than I, and he went to school in Rossland as well. And then he was killed in a car accident at age 22 in Prince George. Mm. And so there's just, after that we were both on our own. Single siblings, I should say.
Single siblings. And so you went to school. Your parents, what were their employment? What were their professions?
Well, my mother was a secretary, for my dad, who had a public accounting business here in town.
Oh, what was that called?
Trevor Jones Accounting.
Trevor Jones Accounting.
I think that's what it was called, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where was it?
Well, he had a little office where the bookstore is now. That was a meat market.
The one in Washington?
On Washington.
Yes.
That was a meat market and a candy store when I was a child. And there was a little office, 2 offices, one behind the other, an apartment in the back of the building at that time. Because it was quite a big old.
So Cafe Books.
Yeah.
So was he upstairs or?
No, on the ground floor.
On the ground floor.
Right at the front.
And where was the candy store? Next door?
Next door. It had been a meat market, and then
then
it became a candy store.
The candy store. Oh, and do you remember ever going in that building?
Oh, yeah.
Does it look very different today?
Oh, yes. Very much so.
How does it look different? Like, what did
Well,
they do
the
to it?
general layout is completely different because it's one building now. It was divided, two storefronts, so to speak.
Two.
And then the stairwell that goes upstairs on the north side of the building, there was 2 suites. There was 3 suites, I believe, and it was made into 2 when the bookstore took over.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever that was, I don't know.
I know I've been in there and I've been out the back as well. Was there a back entrance to this?
To
your dad's?
No, because there was an apartment at the back end. See, he had the store front.
Oh, the very front.
Yeah, the front, and then there was an insurance man, and then there was an elderly lady, Mrs. Donaldson, her name was. She lived in the back apartment. And that was the apartment at the back, behind the 2 stores.
Oh, so there must have been a wall up there
Mm-hmm.
at the bottom level. So it was right now you can walk right through to the back. There must have been a wall there.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how long did he have that business for?
Maybe you can tell about moving to.
Oh, and then, before I tell you that, which I don't remember, he moved his office to the Bank of Montreal building. And he was downstairs where there now is a real estate. That lady has a real estate office.
Mm-hmm.
That was his office. It had been, this is wrong. He was upstairs. He had his office upstairs initially. And Mr. Herdig had the real estate, or insurance was it? Insurance office downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And he was up on the first floor of the bank building. And my mom and dad eventually rented the suite there, which on the main floor there was 2 suites, 2 big humongous suites on each floor. And the one up top was for the bank accountant, and they were in the one, he was a public accountant, nothing to do with the bank, on the other floor.
So his access was from Washington Street?
Mm-hmm, the stairwell there.
Right, the stairwell right there. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So why did he move from the bookstore that we know it as now? Why did he move from there to the Bank of Montreal?
I don't know why. Unless he had a bigger office, probably.
Maybe.
He did have a bigger office.
Oh, yes.
Way bigger.
Right. And do you know any of his major organizations that he dealt with?
Accounting-wise?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't know that.
No,
Red Mountain Ski Hill. Red Mountain Ski Hill.
Red Mountain Ski Hill?
Well, my mom did a bit of secretarial work for them.
Okay. So when you say secretarial work, do you mean like a
Recording minutes,
professional-
meeting
right,
minutes.
Minutes. Was she like a stenographer, or did she know
She knew shorthand, yeah.
She knew shorthand. So she went to school to train.
The business college.
Where was the business college?
Calgary.
In Calgary. So she was trained there before she came out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where did your dad do his studies?
I don't know. I think it might have been all correspondence if they had such a thing in those years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those in Drumheller.
In Drumheller somewhere?
Yeah.
Mm.
Because he was an accountant at the mine, so he must have had some background. But he came to Canada at age 21, so I don't know when he.
Where did he come from again?
Wales.
From Wales, you said that. So you don't think he did his training in Wales?
No.
No.
Worked in
must
the
have
just learned on the job, I think.
Factory, as a matter of fact.
A bicycle factory?
Yeah.
In Wales.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your schooling here, and tell me a little more about when you graduated and what you did after that.
Well, I graduated as I say, in 54, and I went to nurses training in Spokane, Sacred Heart in Spokane. That's a 3-year course at that time. That's how things were then.
And you had to go to Spokane.
I did. Well, I chose to go to Spokane. The world extended to Calgary. My world, as I knew it, extended Vancouver to Calgary when I was a child.
Right.
And there was no more world out there. Young people did not go far away.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had a choice, and I chose Spokane because I don't know why, I didn't have any desire to go to Vancouver because I had lived there as a child. And I had one uncle there, that was all. So I just went to Spokane, which was 2.5 hours away even then.
And so what did you studied nursing? Was that, what kind of nursing did you study?
Well, I got my RN.
RN, registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So when you finished there, how long did it take you to finish the course?
3 years.
3 years. And you came back?
I came here to Rossland because my folks were here. And I worked at the hospital here. It was a Catholic hospital. Mm-hmm. And I was not a Catholic girl. Mm-hmm. And so I got laid off because the patient count went down within 6 weeks. My roommate from training, I shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff, she stayed on for about 1.5 years till she left. And then I went to Calgary.
Right. Now, what was the name of the hospital?
Mater Misericordia.
Yes, because I can't say that. I wanted you to say it. And so you worked with the nuns? Mm-hmm. Were they
that very brief period of time.
Very brief period.
Yeah.
Were they with full habits? And so any interesting memories about working with nuns? And
no, because I had trained in a Catholic school, so I was quite used to them. Being Protestant didn't bother me one way or the other.
All right. And you only stayed there a short time.
Mm-hmm.
So no exciting events over there? No.
At the hospital?
At the hospital?
No.
No?
Not that I recall. I remember working very hard, that's for sure. But
And when you left there, how long did you stay there?
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks, and then you left to go...
I went to Alberta to... See, our parents were... Jim neglected to say that our parents were neighbors when we were babies.
Oh my
They
goodness.
lived across the street from each other. So they were the best of friends, you see. And then we were all in Vancouver together, so to speak, for a few years.
Right.
And then Jim's mom had died when he was 15. So his dad came out a couple of times to visit my mom and dad. And we struck a friendship.
Okay, so how did you meet then? Like what day, on what circumstances did you meet?
We met actually in about 1944 in Vancouver. Your mom was dad there, and we were there on we were there for a while. My dad was in the Air Force in Vancouver, and I used to like Gwen because she used to have a scooter with rubber tires, and there's no rubber scooters or scooters around in those days. No rubber tires.
And he would come to visit, and then my mom and dad, would have him over, and he and his dad, and he would come to visit, and he took my scooter every time, and I got so cross with him, and we had basement stairs going down, steep basement stairs right in the middle of the basement, and he'd go around and around, you couldn't even get down the stairs, and underneath, and then around and around again, on my scooter.
Your scooter.
Yeah.
Now, just so we're clear, when you say scooter...
a scooter is like...
Not motorized.
No. You
did it
right.
With your foot.
With your foot.
Yeah.
That's why I was picturing that, but just in case somebody's thinking...
Like a skateboard scooter. In a way.
Yeah, like a skateboard with a handle at the top. So, okay, so how old were you then when you met with that scooter incident?
Well, I don't know, because I moved away from there in grade 5, so...
Well, grade 5, I guess.
Well, it was before that. Well, 44, I'd be 8 years old.
Yeah.
8 years old. So you're 8 years old when you first really... Yeah. Even though your parents were neighbours, that was the first time in Vancouver when you kind of met.
Yeah.
And when did you meet again then?
Well, I remember Jim and his dad came, and he was about... Well, you were 15 when your mom died, and he was on his own then, so he was probably 16, and they came for Christmas, I think. I think it was Christmas.
Or Thanksgiving.
Or whatever. It was some special occasion anyways. And I can remember going to trail to the arena down there, and boy, he could skate, he could really skate. Uh-huh. But I dumped him, and I came home with another guy. and he came home he brought home a girlfriend of mine. I don't know how he ever got home.
Oh my goodness.
But, we didn't take a bus, that's for sure. I don't know how we got home. I don't remember. Do you?
Oh my goodness.
No.
No buses, right?
No. Not that I remember.
So how did you get from here down to trail?
Good question. Maybe our dad drove us down or something.
Okay. So you come home with a different man, young
boy.
and you come home with a different. Well,
Yeah.
you leave the arena,
Yeah,
the skating
that's all.
arena, with a different person. That's what I
Yeah.
meant to say.
It was a brief visit, only 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And then okay.
And then we went back to the prairie one time, and my mom and brother and I, we remember that, we visited Jim's dad, and Jim was away serving, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyways, his dad loaned the car to a friend of Jim's to take me out. And I was about 16 or 17, I guess.
Oh.
And so he took me out, and we just went driving around in his dad's car, and we got stuck in the mud. Well, Alberta mud is well known. And I don't know how we ever got home. I honestly don't, because we couldn't get this car out of the mud. And so, I don't know how we got back. And he was just livid. Absolutely.
Who was livid?
Mr. Markle.
Oh, Father Markle. Okay.
Yeah. Jim knew nothing about it because he wasn't even there.
Oh, right.
And then my mom, the next day, she decided, because he was batching, you see, his dad was batching. And so she decided that we should clean the windows, the storm windows. They had glass storm windows in those years. You know, you get 2 panes of glass.
Right.
And so we took it was just a little house, and we took these windows off and laid them down on the lawn, and then washed one side, and then when it dried, we turned it over and did the other side and left them to dry.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is it burned the lawn underneath all the glass patches all over the lawn.
Oh,
We got out of there in a hurry.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that was funny.
So what happened after that?
After that? What happened after that? Well, I remember you came
Well,
to
I came to Rossland a couple of times, and you came. Every few years, you used to come with your mom to visit your relatives in Alberta, and you used to drop in and say hello. And then I guess we started writing a few letters, and then Gwen went to Spokane, and I went down to her graduation. That's the first time.
Oh, you did?
And that's when well, actually, I went to Warm Springs, Montana, to psychiatric affiliation. The American girls went to American Lake, it was called, but we were non-citizens, so we couldn't go there. We Canadians, there was about 5 of us in our class, and so we were sent to Montana. And so Jim came down. We met one time. You didn't come down there, I don't think.
You flew up.
Yeah, I flew up from Butte, I think, to it's near Butte, Montana, and I flew up to Lethbridge, and he met me there, and it just went from there.
So you obviously wanted to meet her again, and how old were you this time? Like 21 or something?
Yeah, I'd be 21.
Right.
Got married by 21 and 22.
22.
We've been married 56 years.
56 years. So where did you get married in?
Calgary.
In the Manson Church in Calgary.
Okay, which church was it?
United
Church. Okay. So you got married over there because I guess your parents were all there.
Well, I was working there.
And you were working.
Well, no, my
parents
parents were still in Rossland.
Still in Rossland.
Yeah, and so I got a job there. I just couldn't get a job because I hadn't written my exams yet, my RN exams, I had written them, but the results said they didn't mail the results out till after the Christmas season. You finish, you see, in June or July or August, whatever it was, and then you write your exams, and then you get the results. So you're then officially an RN. Well, I didn't get my results till January, so I had trouble getting a job. So I just went up the line, the town-wise, you know, and I got a job in Innisfail, Alberta. So that's where we kind of courted, really. I was working up there, and his home was in Olds.
Okay, and how far apart is Olds and Innisfail?
20 miles.
20 miles, yeah.
20 miles.
And he worked in Calgary, and we would kind of meet there. So, not really meet there, but we had some family friends, Jim's family friend, and we used to stay there with them because his dad had passed away by that time, hadn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
So you get married, and then Jim, tell me about your children. I assume you had children?
We had 3.
Yep. Well, I guess I worked the City of Calgary Electric Light Department, and when we first got married, and then my father-in-law got the brilliant idea we should move to Rossland. He got lined up the manager for a job in the Bank of Montreal. So I joined the Bank of Montreal on January 15th, 1959, and there was about 14 people on the staff at that time in the bank. in Rossland. Jenny Chaplin, I can always remember her. I don't know who else. Joyce LePage, Hazel Tallman. But the only three I can think of that are still around here now, alive. And so I worked the bank there for a year, and then we got transferred to Vancouver. And in the meantime, my first son, Trevor, he was born in the Rossland Hospital just before we left, actually. Wasn't very long anyway. And then we had our daughter Sandra and our daughter Glennis in Vancouver in that 8-year period where we were down there. And then I decided, I said previously, I decided to leave the bank, and I moved back to Rossland. And then I joined, eventually I joined the city of Rossland, which I worked there with Bill Vickers, who was the clerk treasurer, and I was the deputy clerk treasurer. Worked with him for 14 years, so we had a good time there.
So what drew you back to Rossland?
Lifestyle, I think. Lifestyle.
Yeah, and the bank didn't pay well, especially.
In Vancouver.
Yeah, and
Right.
Living was even expensive then, because we never could buy a house. We'd never be able to buy a house.
In Vancouver?
No. And just like today, you make hundreds of thousands of dollars and you still can't buy a house, because there are 500,000 plus. Well, then a house would be like that. I remember a house we really liked in the neighborhood we were renting in, and it was $19,000. The house was, and it was called cash to mortgage, and so that you, like the more you paid, what did it mean, cash to mortgage? I don't know, but anyways, it made it less money, it's just, but you had to have that much money to put down. Well, who had $8,000 to put down to take over their mortgage, kind of thing? That's what it was.
Yeah.
So we moved to Rossland and bought a house.
Bought a house. And where was the house you bought?
Oh, the address, I don't know. The address was on Kootenai Avenue. It was Mr. and Mrs. Barrett. He was a psychiatrist, I believe.
No, he worked for Chemical.
Yeah. And we lived there for a few years, and then we
were on Kootenai Avenue.
And then we moved across the alley to a new house.
Brand new.
That Lloyd Henderson, who's known in Rossland, and Joe Krepchuk built and on spec, and we bought the house on Cook Avenue. I think it was 2520 Cook Avenue, if I remember
2520, yeah.
And we lived there till we moved here in November 1st, 1998. We moved to Esling Park.
And so, if my memory is catching up with you, you had 3 children.
Right.
And you brought them all here, and they lived in that house there. And so tell me about your children, where they went to school, what they did, what they got up to, any skiing or hockey, or what did they get involved with?
Our first son, Trevor, he graduated in high school in Rossland here, and then he started out with tech, and he was down the furnaces, and then he decided that wasn't very good, so he got a job became an apprentice on an instrument mechanic, which he eventually graduated from, and he worked for tech for 26 years, I believe. And then he left tech to move to AMEC engineering, and he works for AMEC engineering up till today, which is in Trail. And he's had a house. He has had a number of houses in Rossland, but he's now living in Trail. And so we're fortunate we have him nearby, and our daughter Sandra, second child, she lives in Trail and has for a good number of years, so we have 2 of our 3 children live in Trail, or Rossland, Trail area, and our other daughter, Nicholas, lives in Kelowna, and her husband works for TELUS, so they live there. So we feel very fortunate we have 2 of our family, well, all our family is reachable within a few hours, so I find that very, very good.
Yeah, we have 9 grandchildren.
9.
And 2 great-grandchildren.
Nice. So when you were raising your children here in Rossland, I mean, what a wonderful place to raise children. What did they get involved with? Were they with their sports?
Well, Trevor, we call him TJ, but he started skiing, and I had skied as a kid a little bit, but nothing, like I'm not a Red Mountain racer or nothing like that. And then Jim took it up, but at any rate, Now, what came first?
Well, he started playing hockey and then decided that was too bossy.
He was too involved
hockey.
in hockey. Jim was so involved in hockey.
So he decided to go skiing. He said, at least down there you can't catch up to you. You can't remember what to do.
So he took up skiing as a sport.
So downhill skiing or cross-country skiing?
Downhill. And then he was into track and field. He was very active in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember anything else in the way of sports, especially.
No.
He was a good kid.
What about early memories of Rossland?
Well, Sandra was the next one. She was down east. She lived down, after she got married, she lived down in Ontario, London, Ontario for a few years. And then she eventually moved back here and now lives in
Trail.
So she has lived there. In Warfield and Trail for a good number of years now. She lived in Rossland for a brief time, but not for too long.
And so early memories of, what's the earliest memory of Rossland?
For me, it's snow.
Snow.
Yeah, so we rented this house on Columbia Avenue, kitty corner from the Catholic Church, and it hadn't been used all winter. And we moved there in January, and I had to shovel my way in. It took me all day to shovel the path into this house.
Oh wow!
And we had to get used to a coal furnace.
And they had to go outdoors to it.
You had to go outdoors in the back door to go down to the
Off the whole flight of stairs.
You had to go outdoors
to go to the basement to put coal in the furnace.
Yeah.
To keep you warm overnight.
Oh my God.
The house next door, where the hospital used to be, is now a condo building.
Right.
And it was this side, this west side of the hospital. That's the first house there.
Yeah.
And it was the cutest little house. We rented it for $52.50 a month.
From Archie
Coombs,
which is, he was a well-known.
And the $250 was because they had an antenna for the cable vision on the mountain, and he had hooked up to it, and $250 a month is what it cost people. So that's why the rent was $52.50.
Oh, interesting.
I think one interesting thing, I don't know if you've come across in your interviews, is that I believe that Rossland is one of the very first places in Canada that had cable television. They had an antenna up on the Red Mountain somewhere they could hook on. They could catch the Spokane stations, and they distributed it through a cable. And I don't think this was done very often. Very, very few places before Rossland. So.
Was that just a group of people?
Yes.
Did it?
I remember Carl Price was quite involved. In fact, he installed them. So that was the first cable vision, as far as I know. And before that was all antennas. Excuse me.
So you came here in 59, Jim? 58? 59? So you wouldn't have seen the trains. You would have seen some trains here.
Yes.
The CPR and the Great Northern.
The engines were still coming up just for a brief time with us, so we can't remember too much about it. It was mostly done after we saw the track being lifted, but I never really saw the train in real full action. It was used maybe weekly or something. For when we lived here, it wasn't used on a regular basis. So then they announced that they're pulling the track, and they pulled the track all the way down to Warfield.
And what did they do with the track and the wood?
Well, the wood, I don't know. The steel, they must have turned in and got it melted again for steel, I guess.
They took it to Tech to do that, or?
I don't know what they did, how they did that. You'd have to ask one of the old timers. I couldn't tell you that.
Right, yeah. I wouldn't know either. But would you have remembered the trains?
No. Well, yes, I remember the trains because they did come to Rossland when I was a child.
Did you ever go on one?
No.
No?
They weren't that kind of train, I don't think. They weren't passenger trains.
No, passenger.
But they had been a passenger train because my mom and dad had these friends who had a Jimmy Wright, and they had Wright's Meat Market in town. And when they were first married and they lived here, they used to toboggan down to Trail and ride the train back.
That was a full evening. That was a full evening entertainment.
Because I remember when we moved here, Mr. Wright picked us up at Nelson at the train station. Right. Because he was on a committee who hired my dad, you see. So that was why.
So people would toboggan down
to Trail.
Like along the road that we travel down now?
I guess so.
Basically. The road thing.
Because
we've been here, it's basically in the same spot. I think it's been mean,
Well, it had to
many
be.
moons ago
Yeah.
before it came down. It came down past the golf course more, but now it's been built up there for years and years.
Oh,
You'd
okay.
have to ask.
And the train track is across from Redstone Golf Course. It's on the far side of Redstone Golf Course, or south side, I guess it would be. And that's the train track, so they didn't get the trail that way. Because we used to go cross-country skiing down the railroad track and to Warfield, and we'd take a car down and leave one there, you know, a group of us, and leave a car there and go down the track. Otherwise, we just went back and forth. So that was, so they had to go down the highway, such as the highway was, but it wasn't like it is now.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a fairly early memory. And do you remember the wagon road? There was a wagon road near the railroad. It was an old
Yeah, the old wagon road goes to the golf course, the upper course.
It still goes.
Yeah.
Yes, it
But
kind of
but
joins
it's not. It's never was used. It was just used as a hiking trail as long as we've been here.
a hiking trail.
I would say.
Okay.
I must mention the Bank of Montreal was the manager at that time was a gentleman named Bob Watson, and he moved on to Cranbrook, which I lost contact with him. But the accountant was a fellow named Byron Bellamy, and Byron went on to quite a career in the Bank of Montreal, and actually ended up just short of being president of the Bank of Montreal at one time. So he had a lot of banking blood, so that's where I got learned about the banking was through Byron.
And obviously the bank is now a gallery and a multi-purpose meeting room too for different functions. When did it officially change from a bank to another?
Well, the Bank of Montreal, that was involved with the credit
The Bank of
union.
Montreal started here in 1896 or something. And one interesting thing is there's a safe. There used to be a big vault there. I think they've taken it out now. And everyone that worked there in the bank, they used to scratch a name signature on it. And one signature was Robert Service, the poet. He was in the bank there, I believe, around 1898.
Wow.
Then he
As a customer, you mean? Or working?
No, as working.
Oh.
And then he moved north and became famous, being a poet, but whatever it was. And but the bank has been there for years, and it was built because of the mines around the town, and that building is, I think it has a date on it somewhere. It runs in my mind, it's 1898, but I'm not sure. And so Gwen's folks lived on the second floor, which was originally was the journal office for the Leroy Mines, and that's why there's a big room which was used as a living room, dining room. And then there was a kitchen one office, and another office used for a bathroom. And then down the hallway there was about 4 bedrooms in a row, and they're all just small offices. One of them is used by the Chamber of Commerce now.
Or was.
Wow.
Not anymore.
Is it? So the bank has had quite a history, and I don't know when they closed down. I'm not really sure. It must be.
Well, the Bank of Montreal itself was amalgamating, downsizing.
We came back before.
Everything went to trail.
We came back.
There was
to
no bank,
Rossland.
just the credit union. And the credit union, no, a man from Toronto bought it, sight unseen.
Oh yeah, but as mentioned before that, the bank closed around. We were back here in the 60s, so I would say in the late 60s it closed. And I can remember that worked in the last few years there was Lois McMasters, who still lives in Rossland. And I'm sure there's some other ones, but I can't remember who they are. And the bank closed, and the credit union flourished to become the main bank in town.
But not in the same building.
No.
No.
The credit union's always been, the credit union is where the fitness center was, but originally the original office is down in what they call the co-op garage, where you see pictures of all the 50 or 60 cars all lined up, and that's now where the credit union's building is. And then the credit union moved in where the fitness center is now, and it was that they built that building, I believe, and they used that for a good number of years till they got too large, and then they had to move. They bought the new Nelson Credit Union, bought them out, and they built that other building. So it has the banking in this town has some history, and
But wasn't the credit union interested in buying the bank, or they had the option to buy the bank building? But then the deal fell through because you can't do anything with that building because of the underground stuff. You can't knock that building down.
Maybe Heritage too.
It's
It'd be
maybe
slow.
Heritage, yeah.
So I don't know whether the bank, they had a bank, there used to be a clock out in the corner, and I don't know what happened to the clock. It was there, and then when it went down to Credit Union or wherever it went, but it's not around now.
So where was the clock?
It was a clock on this, kind of a pedestal in front of the
In front of the bank.
front of the bank. And everybody knew that, so everybody went, the time went by there.
So kind of where the Olaus
Yeah.
Yaldness statue
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
And and on the bank corner there, that's the cornerstone where there's a survey level of 3,401 feet or whatever it is, and that's where all surveys in Rossland are taken from that corner bank. It's such a solid building; it's never moved in all these years.
How interesting. It's a beautiful building.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you've had quite a history in that, both of you, in that building.
But our history is recent. We haven't, well, Gwen was here earlier, but the first time I really came here to move here was January '59. Probably first time I saw Rossland around 1955 or something like that. But it's been quite a historical town. It sure is different even for us. It's changed quite a bit, and we haven't been here this long. So. One thing I was talking the other day about how somebody was adding up all the corner stores that used to be in town. It wasn't a big, well, I think it was Safeway, or not Safeway, but Super Value had the store, Tom.
Well, there used to be Eaton's.
Yeah.
It was Eaton's?
Yeah. It was an Eaton's store. It was Eaton's, wasn't
And
it?
the Harbor store is now.
Hunter Brothers, and then it was Eaton's.
Yeah.
Hunter Brothers store. When I
And
was a
what
kid.
was Eaton's? I know there was a catalogue. That's all I know.
Yeah, it was a department store.
A department store. Oh, okay.
And anyway.
And they had, when it was there, you didn't have cashiers like you have now. There certainly was no computers. And they put the money in the thing and it would go across the store.
Across the store,
And
on the
then-
wire.
Yeah, on
Right.
a wire, little basket or something. And then that person up there would give the change and run back to the, yeah, I remember that.
Wow. No cash registers.
No, I guess not.
No.
That's
But there was
interesting.
numerous grocery stores, little grocery stores.
And where were they
mom-and-pop
getting
ones.
their vegetables and fruits from? Was it from the Chinese gardens that were here, or how did that work?
Oh, I think that was
I don't
earlier.
know, that was
I think
earlier.
by the time we got here, they were bringing it in
Oh,
by freight. But
that was all done.
By freight, maybe. Right. And Jim, you said you were just down at the Legion just before this interview.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what your involvement is down there. What position?
oh, I'm the treasurer right now of the Legion, and I've been a member of the Legion here for 40 years, I believe, 40 years. And Legion has quite a history, but I couldn't be the person to fill you in on that one too much. Yeah, they have had a different. I think they started out in the basement of what the president called the Armory building, but they eventually built this building, and it's been expanded a couple of times, and so that's another history on the Legion. It was a funeral home, a few other things before it was the Legion.
Where it is now in Columbia. It was a funeral home there.
At one time.
At one time.
But we do suffer in Rossland as far as Legion, because we don't have very many veterans for whatever reason that are alive. I believe there's about 6 or 8. Where most, I was just at a recent zone meeting of the Legions around this area, and they all have military presence because they have veterans from Afghanistan and the different peace things that have happened in the last 30 years, and they have veterans from there. So that's what really helps keep the Legion going, and we are having a problem there because we don't have that many veterans.
Right.
Now, I wish there used to be quite a few here, but it just seemed to be the time has passed.
But about trails.
The Trail Legion
Yes.
is got a lot more veteran presence, and it's a very successful Legion, largest in the area, I believe.
Right. I thought it was pretty
I mean, we live in a building with seniors building, and so we think there's all kinds of seniors here, and I'm sure there are lots. I know there's lots of seniors here. But the fact of the matter is that a few years ago, a young woman was in town, and I don't know what she was doing, but she was doing it on the internet, and the average age of Rossland was 42 years old. I was shocked.
And
It
how
was so
long
low.
ago was that? that she said
No,
that?
do you remember that, Jimmy?
No, I believe it. It's a Rossland young people
She was
town.
she
not
was
an
looking to
old
see,
people
like, you know how now young couples come into town and they work through their computer, they do their job in their home with their computer, etc.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that she was looking at, and she was looking at bookshops because I guess that was her interest, and bicycle shops. Her husband was a guy that worked on bicycles, and so what you could expect in this small town, and she was doing a series all over BC. But the average age
Was 42.
Yeah.
And do you think that's a high average age or a low average age?
well, for average, there's a lot of young people.
It's quite the lifestyle here.
More so now even than then. You know.
With all the established trails. Well, I have to thank you both very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time today. And all the best.